smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The field of 68 has been unveiled. The 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament bracket is here, and we continue breaking down everything you know in this March through the madness. Live right here on SportsGrid, it is Bracket Central, the Selection Sunday special with the coach, JY James Young. I am Ben Stevens. Into hour number 2, all the way until 10 p.m. Eastern time, we get you set. Round of 64 best bets. Cinderella teams that can make a run after pulling off an upset or two into the big dance, and those top teams on the one line and what it looks like to get to Phoenix for the Final Four. JY, before we get to the Final Four, there is the first four. We will have the bubble conversation here as well. The great thing about what we do on the Spiz Grizz, it's all done through the odds. And on this Selection Sunday, within the final 30 minutes before the bracket was unveiled, teams like St. John's that weren't even in the first four out had a minus 205 price to see the NCAA tournament. Oklahoma, the first team out of the field. The Sooners, minus 280. Seton Hall, in consideration, JY, one of the first four out of the NCAA tournament, but a plus 390 number in America's team. Indiana State, led by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila. For the Sycamores, they were left out of the NCAA tournament as well. Instead, we get Colorado State and Virginia, two of the Final Four teams into this NCAA tournament, as well as Colorado and Boise State.
Yeah, I mean, intriguing matchups. And listen, as a coach, you know, it's a tough scene for those kids that didn't make it, that thought they could have made it. But we talked about it before, the bid stealing. But as we bring in our radio audience, Bracket Central, Coach Young, Big Ten Ben, going over some of the playing games that we'll see, the first four games that we'll see in the tournament. And what's interesting to me is Virginia, folks. I think they're going to be the team that's going to be talked about that's going to have to silence the most critics in regards to their play. Their play at the pack line defense, which if you guys don't understand on pack line, what it means is you don't try and deny passes. Your job is to create and make them shoot contested twos. And offensively, run a blocker mover, a lot of screens, not a lot of dribble penetration. Here's the thing you have to watch with a team like this. Short spread versus Colorado State. They cannot play from behind. This does not bode well because they don't have the tempo to play with the pace to pick the game up, nor do they have the pressing capacity. So when you look at this game, if you see something like Colorado State jump out to like a double-digit lead, don't try and jump on Virginia and think that they're going to make a comeback. It's not going to happen. Their style of play doesn't allow it.
Just because of the name of UVA, this Virginia team that outside of that 2019 national championship run has struggled in big dances past. If they're playing from behind, there is a reason why. Colorado State, a slight favorite on that money line. You can see how close it is, minus 118. And JY, when you start with a Virginia game, the first place your eye should go, that over-under. 118.5. Maybe you're new to betting college basketball. Maybe you're wondering what a normal over-under looks like. Generally anywhere in the low to mid 140s. So 118 in a hook is a strong indication of what the Cavaliers do. There are 362 D1 men's college basketball teams, JY. Virginia is the slowest. 362 in terms of that tempo. So as we go elsewhere around the first four, now we go up here. Colorado won 8 straight entering last night's Pac-12 tournament title game on a Saturday evening in Las Vegas. They were a slight favorite against Oregon. The Ducks under Dana Altman, one of those bid stealers, into the big dance. It is interesting, JY, to see Boise State, 6 teams out of the Mountain West, but the Broncos also in a play-in tournament situation. Non-conference strength of schedule for Boise this year, 32nd. That's pretty good by the metrics.
That is good by the metrics. And a Colorado team that earlier during the year, I had Jeff Goodman on the Betting Above the Rim podcast. He actually liked Colorado, folks, not just to make the tournament. He thought this was a sleeper team. Ready, folks? To get to the Final Four. So a team that some people think may have underachieved at parts during the year. You look at the 2 matches versus Arizona, they got absolutely rolled. But this is a team that's playing better now. Simpson to guard. And listen, Boyle's one of the best coaches in the country. You may not know about. This is going to be a very intriguing matchup. And like I said, whoever comes out of that matchup, I think wins the 10-7 game in an upset.
It is really interesting as well. When you look at this Colorado team, they were flirting with the bubble, maybe on the outside, entering the final 3 or so weeks of this regular season. Won 8 straight, their final 6 in the regular season, and then, of course, into the Pac-12 tournament as well. In that 8-game win streak, prior to the loss in the Pac-12 tournament title game against Oregon, they were booked as a single-digit favorite 5 of those 8 games, and they covered in every one of them. A 2-point favorite for the first 4 matchup against Boise State in Dayton. And it does need to be said, we have seen a first 4 format, the addition of the 68 teams on top of the 64 to the NCAA tournament field, JY, for the last 12 big dances. 11 of those 12 years, a team that has won in the first 4 wins a game into the round of 64 as well. It could be a 16 seed. We saw that with FDU at times as well. Often it is in these games that you have on the 10 line, Boise State and Colorado, Virginia as well, taking on Colorado State. 11 of the 12 years, the first 4 format has been around into the big dance. A team that wins in the first 4 wins a game in the round of 64 as well. Know that for your brackets and your bets on Thursday and Friday. I have an issue, JY, with automatic qualifiers playing in the first 4 for these 16 seeds. The dream of dancing can be short-lived, but Montana State, a team that is accustomed to being here, 3rd straight NCAA tournament appearance. Not a great year for the Bobcats, just 17-17, but did upset their in-state rivals Montana in that Big West tournament title game, or excuse me, not the Big West, but out there for the Big Sky for Montana State and Montana. Grambling State into the big dance as well, a 4.5-point number between Montana State and Grambling, who gets the big dance for the first time in a while.
And if you look at Montana State, you start lining up the metrics and synergy. Advantage for points per possession, Montana State. Field goal shooting percentage, Montana State. They turn the ball over less. They have more assists, better assist-to-turnover ratio. The only thing you'll see a little bit is steals against. So if you look at this, Montana State, if they're able to play their game in a half court, this is why this number is this, because offensively the metrics line up and say that Montana State has the advantage over Grambling. And here's the thing, folks. I agree about it. I don't like these automatic qualifiers playing a first 4. But the one thing as a coach you try to say is, well, you know what? We could be the first team in our school's history to get an NCAA tournament win.
Which is huge as well. Wagner, by the way, the champions of the Northeast Conference, also a 16 seed that will play in the first 4. No lines out for that game in Dayton. But for Wagner, a team that did not have a great year in the NEC, had to win 3 straight road games to go dancing into the NCAA tournament. The Seahawks able to pull off just that. We will continue our region-by-region breakdown around the NCAA tournament field of 68, JY, as we go back to the desk in just a moment. But just so the people out there are aware, if you joined us in hour 2 after you saw the bracket laid out, the 4 teams on the 1 line, Connecticut, the reigning national champs, and the favorites to make it 2 in a row, a plus 420 number. Houston in the South region, Purdue in the Midwest, North Carolina takes that final spot on the 1 line as well, the 1 seed in the West region. Will continue spinning it around in the Midwest. Up next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is a guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too, because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it, somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special. Live right here up until 10 p.m. Eastern Time on a day that many consider a national holiday. It is Selection Sunday for the NCAA Tournament in 2024. He's the coach. That's JY James Young. I am Ben Stevens. We go bracket by bracket, region by region. In the opening hour, it was the top overall team in the tournament, UConn, the 1 seed in the East. Then the number 1 seed in the South region, that was Houston. Now to the Midwest, where the 1 seed is Purdue. Many will make the jokes at the expense of the Boilermakers, but it is now time for Matt Painter and Purdue to reclaim that narrative. Their season defined by this run in the NCAA tournament. The Boilers trying to get to a Final Four for the first time in more than 4 decades since 1980. Third best national championship price, JY, at a 7-1 number. As we focus on the top half, Utah State, TCU, that's the 8-9 matchup. The winner, more than likely, awaits Purdue, because Purdue will take on the winner of the first 4 matchup between Montana State and Grambling. Gonzaga and McNeese also in the top half of the Midwest region. And as we pour it through, Kansas and Samford, a game I know we will look at in just a moment. But we start with Purdue, JY, because their story will define a lot of this big dance, a lot of this college basketball season. The path for Purdue, how does it look in your estimation?
I think the path looks good in that top half of the draw. And for me, folks, listen, you could talk about what happened last year. If I'm Matt Painter, I'm not even, you know what, I bring up last year. I bring up the fact that, listen, we are a year older. We are a year wiser. And we have, to me, I think the guard play. Now, to me, the concern I have with Purdue, honestly, is Braden Smith, who has gotten banged up a couple of times, folks, the last couple of games. I think both Wisconsin games, I think he's gotten banged up and has left the game and had to come back. Or I think Wisconsin ended the regular season, and then I think Michigan State during the Big Ten. On Friday. So
did play on Saturday, though, in the Big Ten tournament semifinal. Yep.
And I think if you look at Purdue, as great as Zach Edey has been, to me, it's been the play of Braden Smith in some of these big games. I remember the Alabama game when he went absolutely nuclear. And you've seen a little bit of a difference of how Matt Painter's run his offense now. It's not so much just that what we call the horn set, where you set the high screen or the high pick and roll, you're running Zach Edey to the block. They're doing a lot of dribble handoff where Edey's handing the ball off to Braden Smith. If you go under, he shoots a three, he turns a corner. There's a roll by Zach Edey, put another shooter in the corner. So to me, Braden Smith's going to be the key, but this is the team, folks, that, listen, when Smith, when Lawyer, with Gillis, when Jones, when these guys hit threes, Ben, they are dangerous. The problem is, at sometimes they don't hit them. But to me, I think a run's coming for Purdue this year.
The odds not out yet for the round of 64 game for Purdue because, of course, they await the winner of the first four action between Grambling and Montana State. We quickly look at the bottom half of this bracket in the Midwest region before we turn our attention to our favorite matchups in the Midwest. South Carolina, a team that surprised in the SEC, draws the Pac-12 tournament champs. That would be Oregon. Creighton and Akron, John Gross, the coach of the Zips, the champions of the MAC, former Illini head coach, knowledge of the Big Ten Conference. Texas awaits the winner of Virginia and Colorado State in the first four. And then there's that 15 seed out of Jersey City, New Jersey, St. Peter's once again. The champions of the MAC, St. Peter's, the Peacocks, they know how to fly in the month of March. But, JY, we go to our favorite matchups in the Midwest region. Of all of these games that we will see in the round of 64, what draws your attention first?
Well, you know where I'm going. Sanford and Son. Sanford versus Kansas.
I didn't know where you were going.
Listen, I'm 47. I'm a little bit older than Big Ten Ben, so it may have predated him a little bit. Sure. But, all right, so I'm going to go with Kansas versus Sanford. And a matchup, to me, this has to do more than anything about health. What do we get out of those two guys, and McCullough and Dickinson? Because you take those guys out, then they become different. Listen, Kansas is dynamic offensively, 81st in points per possession offense. But guess what, folks? Sanford is 57th. They can keep the pace. Yeah. And we talk about effective field goal percentage, 54% for Kansas. Now, you're missing your two best scorers, or they're maybe not healthy. So to me, that is an intriguing matchup. A team like Sanford who can shoot the ball and bomb away. You hit enough threes, the guys aren't healthy. That's going to be an intriguing matchup, Kansas versus Sanford.
8.5-point spread in favor of the Jayhawks, who were not long for Kansas City this past week. Often a home floor environment, despite being a neutral floor in the Big 12 tournament, without Kevin McCullough Jr. and Hunter Dickinson. Sanford, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, top 10, 39.3% from deep. My favorite matchup in the Midwest, as it stands for me, is Gonzaga and McNeese. The Zags into the NCAA tournament once again. There was a thought maybe they wouldn't be an at-large bid despite falling to St. Mary's in that WCC tournament title game. With that said, by the time they got to the conference tournament, Gonzaga had figured things out. But McNeese, under the bagman, Will Wade, that in the current climate of college athletics, maybe we were a little bit too harsh on Will Wade, because McNeese is a 30-3 basketball team, and you see it reflected in the spread, around a 6.5-point number in favor of Gonzaga. Is there a potential, JY, that the Cowboys under Will Wade, 30 wins throughout this season leading up to the big dance, might be able to knock off Mark Few and the Zags?
I think so. I think McNeese is one of the hottest teams in the country, the way they play, their style of play. And I think when you look at a team like Gonzaga, who played well, then you turn around and you watch the game against St. Mary's, and some of their deficiencies start to come up. I think this is a really intriguing game. I like McNeese State plus the 6. I don't know if they pull the upset, but if you look at total, 145.5, this game could have some dynamic offensive play on both sides.
It is interesting as well, because Gonzaga entering that St. Mary's game in the WCC tournament title had gone over in 6 of 9. They're only 2 unders, really, against St. Mary's down the stretch. They can pace up, and they've also covered in a 9-game win streak leading up to that tournament title game against the Gales. McNeese, 30 wins this year, a team that can play with the 51st most efficient offense in all of college basketball. Upset alert time, a team to look at, JY, in the round of 64 as an underdog in the Midwest, who might be on upset alert in this portion of the bracket.
You know what? I'm going to go with the team that's kind of come out of nowhere, and that's Dana Altman, the Oregon Ducks. Oregon Duck team that people are talking about Dana Altman retiring at the end of the year, and his team got hot. And if you look at the way they play and they match with South Carolina, they're going to be able to score the ball with their 108th ranked offensive points per possession. they're going to be able to score enough. And this South Carolina team, folks, they are quirky. They've had some great wins. But I still see that 45-point beatdown they got from Auburn a couple of weeks ago, and there's concern there. Can Dana Altman rally his troops again? The me against the world. No one thought we were going to be here. We had to fight our way to the NCAA tournament. Now that we're here, we don't want to go home after one game. Yeah. Let's keep the upsets going. I do like Oregon over South Carolina.
14 wins for South Carolina in SEC action this year. In their 12 covers, 10 of them came as an underdog, only 2 as a favorite. Again, outright for the Cox as an underdog, a way to look. But Oregon, the Ducks, will be the dog in this matchup against South Carolina. My favorite matchup in the Midwest region, my upset alert in the Midwest region, where things stand right now, as I cannot find where we are here. Utah State against TCU. I knew that I would find it. The Mountain West team in Utah State right now, the Aggies, a 2.5-point dog against Jamie Dixon and TCU. I look at a Utah State team, experienced right now as they enter this NCAA tournament with something to say. And I think the Aggies, JY, could put TCU on upset alert. Again, it's the 8-9, where the 8 in Utah State is actually booked as the slight underdog. Quickly here, final 40 seconds of this segment, player to know in the Midwest region.
It's got to be Ryan Kalkbrenner, the big man from Creighton, 7'1". If there's a big that could have size for Zach Edey, it's Kalkbrenner.
Yeah, he was and is, I believe, the 3-time reigning Big East Defensive Player of the Year. Dalton Knecht, for me, the best bucket getter in the country, the star for Tennessee, SEC Player of the Year. The Vols, the 2 seed in the Midwest, they will face off against St. Peter's. Jim Root joins us next for his handicaps for the big dance.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
this
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
This is
the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8-point dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5-point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it, somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on Bracket Central, it's Selection Sunday. We go all around the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament here on SportsGrid. Right. James Y is here. Refreshed. Jim Root should hopefully be with us in just a little bit. Not sure if you can hear his audio across the SportsGrid network. But as we go through the NCAA Tournament bracket, working through some technical blimps at this moment. Jay, while we were talking about the Midwest region and some of those main storylines to know, you highlighted a player to know in Ryan Kalkbrenner for Creighton, the big man who is efficient defensively, one of the best in the Big East. They're the 3 seed at the bottom end of that bracket. They draw Akron in the round of 64 game. It will be the Jays versus the Zips. How tough of a test is that for CU to begin?
Yeah, it could be a tough test for CU. Akron, who got in one of the, I would call, craziest ways. I just feel so bad for that kid from Kent State that went down. If folks, I'm sure you saw the end of the game. A coach's nightmare, definitely a player's nightmare. But this would be an interesting game for a team like Creighton. I think Creighton could be a team that could be on upset alert in that 3-14 game versus Akron. But I also think this could be a team that can make a deep run. Yeah. And the reason why I like Kalkbrenner, folks, is, yes, he is a 3-time defending Big East Defensive Player of the Year, as Ben alluded to last segment. But the other part of Kalkbrenner's game is I need him to be a force inside. If he's a force inside and be able to score in the low block, then and be an offensive rebounder. I know he can step out and shoot the 3. Now as a coach, you got to worry about it. So what does that do? Shireman, Ashford, those shots now become open. Alexander's got more room to play with. So to me, as well as Kalkbrenner is defensively, I think offensively at 17.1 points per game, he's got to be their go-to guy early in games to establish low post position.
Creighton had won 7 of its final 8 regular season games in Big East action, entering the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden, bounced in their opening round by Providence. However, Creighton, in those 7 wins in their final 8 regular season games, they won all 7. They covered in all 7. A 12.5-point favorite against Akron again. John Gross, the head coach of the Zips, former Illinois coach, he knows a thing or two about the NCAA tournament. As we go through here, if we can just make sure we get a check on Jim Root from our producers and production staff behind. I believe Jim Root is here with us now, live on Bracket Central, the Selection Sunday special. There he is. Jim, great to see you. Thank you for joining us here on this Selection Sunday. Very glad to have you a part of the program.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm very overwhelmed right now, just trying to process matchups, lines, totals, like just trying to figure out what I want to dive into. But even just having this kind of cutting down to a couple that are best bets is like, all right, it at least makes me focus on instead of trying to handicap all 32 games at once.
Jim here joining us on behalf of the Field of 68, looking at this year's Field of 68, of course, doing great work with the 3-man weave as well. So, Jim, we're going to go region by region throughout this 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament bracket with some of your best bets that you have an early eye on for the round of 64. Let's start with the 8-9 matchup in the East region. It's FAU, the Final Four Cinderella of a season ago against a Northwestern team. The Wildcats making their 2nd straight NCAA tournament for the first time in program history. Very short number, only 1.5 points in favor of the Owls. How do you see that round of 64 matchup playing out?
Yeah, I love FAU here, and apparently other people do too. The 1.5 was what I just had glanced at, and now it's 2.5, it's 3. I can't bet it because I'm in Illinois, so I've got to wait until I get to Las Vegas this week and hope the number hasn't taken off too far. But no, I think it's a great spot for FAU. They've been a better tournament team. The loss to Temple notwithstanding, but you go back to the Final Four run last year, and then in the Disney event, the pre-conference tournament that they won down in Florida in Orlando, they're just kind of built for that style where they can play in different ways, and they've got a bunch of different guys that can create offense on the perimeter. And they started to figure out a defensive lineup with Brendan Lorient playing the 4 and not being all 4 guards. I think that sets up kind of well. And the Northwestern's just banged up right now. Chris Collins has done such a good job with them, but Nicholson dealing with that foot injury. I don't know if he's going to be able to play in the tournament. Seems unlikely. Ty Berry obviously still out. And they've had guys step up, like no question about it. Barnheiser and Martinelli have been terrific. But I just think this is more FAU's game. This setting sets up well for some of those guys. And I think especially like Elijah Martin and Brian Greenlee were terrible against Temple. I think they're much, much better in this game.
And I agree, Jimmy. When you look at this matchup, obviously you look at the fact, before I can throw it back to Ben, is if you look at every metric on synergy offensively of FAU versus Northwestern defense, they have all the advantages. Points per possession, effective field goal percentage. When you have a team like Northwestern, 284th in the country in effective field goal percentage defense, turnover rate, free throw shooters, and then obviously the big one for me, scoring percentage, scoring at about 46% of the time at 29th in the nation versus a team that's 274th. So I do agree with you, Jim, 100%. FAU minus the points is the pick.
Jim, as we go east to west, in the West region, a game that caught my eye on the round of 64, Charleston and Alabama. The total starting to trickle out around the NCAA tournament here for this field of 68. Do you expect some scoring between Charleston and Alabama to open up the NCAA tournament?
Very much so. I don't know why this one isn't like 80 possessions and 180 points. That seems like a solid bet to me. Both teams love to get out and run up and down. I mean, that's been Alabama's MO for years. And then Pat Kelsey at Charleston, he did it at Winthrop. He's carried it over to Charleston. They love to get out and go. They're pretty deep. They've got all kinds of shooting. That's what got them through that Coastal Athletic Tournament. And that was a weird event with like kind of tough shooting backgrounds and slow games. I think it'll be like a little bit of slingshot effect for Charleston playing against somebody like Alabama that wants to run, unlike pretty much everybody else in that CAA tournament that they faced. And Alabama's defense is terrible. Like, it's been awful, circling the drain over the last couple of weeks here. I mean, they've given up a ton to Arkansas. They just got smashed, giving up triple digits to Florida in the SEC tournament. They have a tough time with teams that can spread it out with different creators, guys that can go off the bounce. And that's what Charleston does. They got a lot of skill up and down that lineup. Even their bigs can be creative off the bounce. Berzovich is terrific. Burnham can do it as well. I think they spread out Alabama, get a ton of points that way, and Alabama just scores like crazy themselves, one of the best offenses in the country. So between pace and efficiency, this is one over I'm definitely eyeing. I think we get points.
And Jim, you're absolutely right. You said 80 possessions, 87 for Alabama, 83 for Charleston. So right there as a coach, if I'm looking at Synergy Scouting Report, I'm saying run. Both teams top 100 and points per possession. Right outside the top 100 is Alabama and Charleston in field goal, effective field goal percentage, where Alabama's 12th. They don't turn the ball over a lot, either team. So a lot of pace, a lot of possessions, a lot of points. So I do agree, over is a play there.
Alabama's second most efficient offense in the country, 9th fastest tempo. That is a recipe for offense on the biggest stage in the big dance. The number 1 seed, Jim, in the South region, that is Houston, 23.5-point favorite against Longwood in the round of 64 game. Do you think the Cougs, who came up short in the Big 12 tournament title game, come out with a vengeance in their opener in the NCAA tournament?
I do, yeah. I just think Longwood's not a great big underdog. I think back to a couple years back when they were against Tennessee, and I think it was a 3-14 matchup, and they lost by like 38. They got completely destroyed. It's a very impressive team and well coached with Griff Aldrich, and they had a great run through the Big South tournament. But again, they were under 500 in that league. This wasn't like a team that was knocking down the walls all season. Now they're taking on Houston that can just destroy you with their defense. Look what they did in the first 10 minutes of their quarterfinal and semifinal matchups in the Big 12 tournament. I know Iowa State got them in the final, but it's a team that lacks depth. So third game in 3 days, I wasn't too panicked about that. We're not going to see them have to do that in the NCAA tournament. The one concern here for me is that it's a very low total game. Sub 130 might feel like a mountain to climb to cover such a big number, but unless Longwood is really hot from deep, I think they're going to struggle to get any sort of easy baskets inside. I think this could be like a 80 to 45 type of like suffocation type game.
And when you look at it, listen, as a coach, folks, I hope you looked on social media. Do you see what these guys do in practice at Houston? It's the old Bob Hurley rule of no out of bounds. You can go anywhere. They take out coaches. They take out managers. They take each other out. So you think after the way they played against Iowa State that they're not going to, I guess, lay the wood against Longwood. Dun. I think that Houston is going to win. They may be up by 22 at the half.
Houston, always a very aggressive defense, second best in the country entering the NCAA tournament. Now we go to the Midwest region, Jim, and we have a team in the Oregon Ducks who went on a run to win the Pac-12 tournament title. We saw chaos during conference tournament week to start off March. Do you think that madness in the chaos, in the momentum, continues for Oregon in the NCAA tournament?
I absolutely do. I'm getting a lot of feeling of 2019 here with the Ducks when they went on a run to win the Pac-12 tournament, got in as a 12 seed, made the Sweet 16. There's some similar, build to this team where they're incorporating some really talented freshmen. That team had Louis King and Will Richardson as a freshman. This one's got Cook and Evans, and Shellstad has been terrific as a freshman point guard, getting great games out of Cousinard lately. And the key to me in that Pac-12 tournament was Altman started to bring out his real changing defenses. He throws pressure at you. He throws zones. He mixes it up from possession to possession. He keeps you super off balance. It's really hard to prepare for if you're not familiar with it, if you haven't seen it constantly. I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue there, and Oregon can advance and win that one outright. And again, I think they could go Sweet 16 again.
Jim, as he told you there with Oregon, keep an eye on the Ducks. Maybe James Madison as the 12 seed as well in that South region. So, Jim, before we let you go, 30 seconds left in this segment. Who is your national champion at the end of 2024?
Big shrug. I'm boring. I'm saying UConn. There's the best team I've watched all year. They kind of have the no real Achilles heel the way I think some of the other really top teams do. They've got a lot of different guys that can hurt you. They're super unselfish. They're deep. That's not going to be a problem with them going through the tournament. Hurley and that staff do a great job getting them prepared game-to-game scouting-wise. I'm sure Coach, you can speak to that. They're just the best team in the country.
Jim, sorry to cut you off. We got to go to commercial break. Thank you for your time. Forward.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes, and they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We go region by region for the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament bracket. We started in the East with the number 1 overall seed and the reigning national champs. That's UConn. The 1 seed, the second on that one line, would be Houston in the South region. Then we went to the Midwest, where Purdue is on that one line. And now we finish it off, JY, with the fourth and final of our region-by-region breakdown out in the West. And it was a hotly contested number 1 seed in this region. Would it be Iowa State? Tennessee falling short in the SEC tournament really eliminated them. Arizona stumbling in the Pac-12 as well. It ended up with North Carolina. Many thought it would be Iowa State after victoriously running through the Big 12 tournament title. Instead, it is UNC. A slight story of redemption for one of the Blue Bloods in this sport. The Tar Heels last year ranked number 1 in the preseason AP poll after winning or getting to the national championship game a year prior. They were the first team in the AP poll history to be ranked first as the year got underway to not reach the big dance. Now, JY, 1 next to their name once again as the 1 seed in the West region.
And yes, it is a great redemption for them. And I think, we'll talk about another team in that region coming up in a little bit. But to me, with North Carolina, folks, I'm going to say it. I think it's addition by subtraction. I think the Caleb Love effect, he had to go. I think it made R.J. Davis become the guard that they think he was capable of becoming, and Armando Bacot. But for the 3rd straight year, Hubert Davis went into the portal, and he went and got an experience, this time more of a 3. If you think about 2 years ago, it was Brady Manick. If you think about last year, it was a transfer Petey Nance out of Northwestern. Yeah. And this year, Cormac Ryan. Now, to me, if North Carolina, folks, is going to make a run and get to a Final Four, I know Baycock's going to be Baycock. I know RJ is going to do what he's got to do. To me, it's Harrison Ingram and it's Cormac Ryan. If you watch, especially that game against Duke last Saturday night, the way that President Cormac was able to shoot the ball straight to the floor, but also Harrison Ingram as a stretch for to be able to beat slower bigs off the bounce, those two, to me, hold the keys to which if North Carolina can make a run to the Final Four.
And JY, you pointed this out in our opening hour when we were looking at those national championship odds and how it correlated to the seed ranges throughout this NCAA tournament. North Carolina is the 1 seed in the West region, but has a worse or longer price to win a national title at 20-1 than the 2 seed at the bottom of this portion of the bracket. That would be Arizona. They are the number 2 seed in the West region. They will take on the 15 in Long Beach State. We'll have a story about LBSU in just a moment. But as we look at the West region in the 2024 NCAA tournament, we go to our favorite matchups. JY, what is your favorite round of 64 matchup out West?
I'm going to go with Richard Pitino, and not Rick. Sorry, Rick, you didn't make the tournament this year. And I'm going to go with Clemson versus New Mexico. And I think this is going to be a popular, trendy pick in looking at a team like New Mexico to win. If you start looking at lining up the metrics on synergy, offensively, it's very similar, I should say, offensively of Clemson versus defensively of New Mexico. Defensively, New Mexico 35th versus 28th in points per possession. Possessions, they both play at a slow pace, right? Effective field goal percentage, 49th for New Mexico, 51st for Clemson. So it's kind of close. But then you start to flip it to the other way when New Mexico's on offense. 100th offensively. Clemson, 232nd in points per possession. Possessions, we know maybe New Mexico will try and play a little bit quicker. The turnover percentage, we have a team in New Mexico who doesn't turn over. Clemson doesn't force turnovers. So when you start lining up how they match up, intriguing, and that's why you're going to see a lot of people like New Mexico to beat Clemson.
I like the Lobos in this spot, laying 2.5 points. It would have been an upset pick because New Mexico is on the 11 line, and Clemson is a 6 seed, except New Mexico, the 11 seed, is booked as a 2.5 point favorite. Just something to mention here when you look at how you fill out your bracket throughout the years. The 11 over 6 is actually a more frequent occurrence of an upset than the trendy 12 over 5 as we have seen as of late. I have the stat somewhere here that we'll get to you in just a little bit. But a 2.5 point spread actually in favor of New Mexico. An upset from the seed line, not necessarily an upset in terms of what the betting odds have to say. Also something about New Mexico, 13 teams out of the 362 at the D1 level in men's college basketball covered in 65% of their games or more. The Lobos are one of them. My favorite matchup in the round of 64. Make it 26 consecutive years. Michigan State has gone dancing. All 26 of those appearances under Tom Izzo. He has the longest streak consecutively for any head coach in D1 history. And the Spartans JY open as a 1.5 favorite against Mississippi State. We talked about redemption for North Carolina year over year. MSU, ranked 4th in the AP preseason poll, fell off throughout most of this season. Very up and down. 19-14. 14 losses is a ton for an at-large berth, but the metrics backed up what Michigan State had to say. No bad losses, really, for Sporty all year long. Short 1.5 favorite against the Bulldogs team under Chris Jans that can defend the basketball for sure.
Yeah, and I think, listen, it'll be an intriguing matchup. And listen, January, February is April, so we're at that point, and a team that has played better. And listen, there's going to be talk about why they shouldn't not have gotten in, but they got in. Listen, what Tom Izzo, to me, with time to prepare, is still one of the 5 best coaches in the country. And I think that you will see Tom Izzo have his team ready, and he's a master motivator. So I think he will definitely have some kind of motivation towards his team in regards to, hey, people don't think we should be there. We shouldn't be here. Let's go out and let's show and let's make a run. And they are capable of doing it.
You know that they certainly can make a run in the month of March. We will see if Michigan State able to accomplish that. Now, as we look through the West region and those upset alerts, which one catches your eye? I believe it's a trendy 12-5 pick that a lot of brackets might have as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Grand Canyon, the Antelopes, to get the upset over St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a very, very good defensive team. They're one of the best in the nation always. But to me, what you're going to have is you're going to have a contrast of styles. A team in Grand Canyon that wants to push the pace versus a team that wants to walk it up, which means I think this is a team in Grand Canyon who it's got Tyon Grant Foster. This kid's a pro. Straight up pro, getting you about 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, shoots at about 45% from the floor. Now, he doesn't shoot the ball from 3 the way you want it, only about 33%. But I think this is a kid that could make big waves in this game, and I think he could be a matchup problem for a team like St. Mary's. I like the upset with the Antelopes.
I think Grand Canyon has the potential based on how the West region sets up because of another game that I'll talk about, the 4-13 between Alabama and Charleston, to maybe not just win one, but maybe advance to the second weekend of the NCAA Tournament in a Sweet 16 berth. Grand Canyon, 29 wins this year, JY, for GCU, a team that has been consistent as of late. Running through the WAC, they have won at least 77% of their games outright in the last 2 college basketball seasons. I mentioned the Alabama-Charleston game. You heard Jim Root break it down from the over-under perspective. Total probably will come out in the high 160s. I would take the over as well. But I believe Charleston, because of the pace and the ability offensively to match that of Alabama, with the Crimson Tide struggling to defend the basketball, that the Cougars of Charleston might have an opportunity, 59th fastest tempo as well, to keep pace with Alabama, to push that number where not many teams might want to play as fast as the Crimson Tide. I would keep an eye on Charleston to maybe pull that round of 64 upset.
Yeah, and this is going to be a game that's going to be about pace. Yeah. Like, so this is not Washington State here. This is not Virginia. This is get your track shoes ready and get on the run. I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup. And yes, here's the thing. there's going to be points.
Yeah.
And Alabama, who has struggled mightily defensively over the course of the year, if you get a team that's hot and they can shoot the ball and push the pace like Charleston can, that can lead to upsets.
Yeah.
I think it's a close game with a lot of fireworks.
32 games for Nate Oates' Crimson Tide team in Alabama. They have gone over in 24 of 32. And when you look at the losses for the Crimson Tide, they dropped 4 of their final 6 games, including their opener in the SEC tournament against the Florida Gators. They did not cover in any of those losses, only 1 cover in their last 6 games to end out before the big dance, and that was as an underdog in that matchup, or excuse me, as a favorite against Ole Miss. They scored 103 in that matchup. So a player to know, JY, in the West region. Who gets your eye? Who do the people here on the SportsGrid Network need to know about?
Oh, you know I'm going with a big man, right? I mean, I'm pretty consistent with it. Omar Ballo, come on down. The congregation wants to talk to you. And more specifically, you, Caleb Love. Folks, you got a guy that's shooting about 63% from the floor in each of his seasons at Arizona. But yet, there are times, like the last game they played, where Omar Ballo takes 5 shots, where Caleb Love will just bomb away. As a coach, I want to go, I talked about a little bit, Kalkbrenner, inside out. Folks, this guy is an absolute load. And if you think about it, if you look at synergy and his stats, the thing that's interesting about him is out of his scores, ready, folks? 93% of them are in the low post, right? That's where he wants to score. That's where he's got to get the ball. So to me, that's going to be pretty important here, and it's putback. So if you're able to get him to score the ball in the low block and get him to attack the O boards and finish, that will open up for Johnson, for Love, and others. I think the mindset for Arizona's got to change, and maybe now that when you get into the NCAA tournament, Ben, and for the most part the game slowed down, maybe you start to lean on the big man.
Zona tied for the 4th best price to win a national championship at 15-1. Behind them is North Carolina at an 18-1 number. We've actually seen some market movement in the Tar Heels' favor. It was 20-1 just about an hour and a half ago when we began here on Bracket Central, this Selection Sunday special. Also, we need to talk about Long Beach State. Dan Munson, the 17-year head coach for LBSU, was actually let go at the end of the regular season earlier this week. A mutual parting of ways between Long Beach State and their longtime head coach in Dan Munson. But he was going to coach out the Big West tournament. Just so happened that Long Beach State got hot, won all 3 games in the Big West tournament, and then made their way into the big dance as the 15 seed in the West region. My player to know out in the West region, where it stands right now, as I scroll down here, is Deron Holmes for Dayton. The Flyers right now on the 7 line in the West region. If they knock off Nevada in their opening game, they very well could see Omar Ballo and Arizona in the round of 62. Deron Holmes is a name that could be in contention for a 1st or 2nd team All-American nationally this year. He leads the Flyers, according to Kenneth Pomeroy, one of the brightest minds in college basketball. He is the 4th most valuable player in all of the country. If Dayton is going to have success in the West region, a lot of it will run through Deron Holmes. That is where it stands for the Flyers at the moment, who actually open as a very short underdog, minus 114 money line, JY, for Nevada, plus 105 on the other side for the Flyers.
Yeah, the Dayton Flyers team didn't really have the season that they wanted, I would say, in the Atlantic 10. I think they finished in 3rd, but Deron Holmes at 20.4 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists. This dude is a high flyer, and he could do it all, including shooting from 3. Very intriguing NBA prospect.
North Carolina, the top team in this portion of the bracket in the West region, awaits the winner of Howard and Wagner in the opening first 4 game in Dayton. In that matchup, the line just came out. Howard, the champions of the MEAC, a 2.5-point favorite. We round out hour 2. Up next, here on Sports.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Kentucky on the road as a 7-8 dog, beat Tennessee by 4. North Carolina as a 5.5 point underdog, beat Duke on the road.
I took Kentucky plus the points. I think you won it as well. I even said I wouldn't be shocked if they won it. I'm not shocked. They're just that good. It's can they be focused for 40 minutes? And they actually played, I guess you would call it somewhat defense.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
And a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament. Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
Depending on what bracket they end up on, they could really make a strong case to win the national championship. Hence why their odds keep getting shorter, and shorter.
Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We round out this second hour of SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Sunday Special, live on Selection Sunday. He is the coach, James Young, JY. I am Ben Stevens. We will wait for the most outstanding player odds, JY, to come out for the NCAA tournament. But as we have gone region by region throughout this field of 68 and the tournament bracket this year, we have highlighted some names to know. Who are a couple others as you look around this bracket right now that you think will be in the conversation for the MOP? Of course, it is always correlated to the team that makes a run to the Final Four and maybe the eventual national champ.
Yeah, to me, you know, you're gonna get the favorites, right? You're gonna get the Tristan Newtons, you're gonna get the Donovan Klingons, you're gonna get the Jamal Sheds. I would look at maybe someone like an LJ Cryer out of Houston, who has become honestly their leading scorer and at times their most consistent scorer. But when you start digging around a little bit, I keep going to Creighton. I just have this feeling that they're going to make a run. And I think because I think they can pose the matchup problem with the size of Kalkbrenner with Zach Edey. And I just think because of the half-court game and the ability to block shots and the fact that gets you 17 points per game, if he can get it up to 20, I'm looking at Kalkbrenner if they make a run as I don't know if I would call it a sleeper pick, folks. Coach still struggles with the term sleeper, but that'll be my maybe value pick to win most outstanding player, Ryan Kalkbrenner.
When you look at a 20-1 number on Creighton, I would not call them a sleeper either. That is 8th best out of all 68 teams out of the NCAA tournament. But a good look nonetheless because Creighton has optimistic odds. The outlook there for the Jays tied to one of their best players, the big man down low in Ryan Kalkbrenner. Creighton did make it to the Elite Eight a season ago, just the second ever Elite Eight appearance in program history. They came up short against San Diego State. CU has never been to a Final Four. I'll give you some names that probably not going to win most outstanding player, but names to know. How about Keisei Tominaga? One of the most electric buckets in all of the Big Ten for Nebraska the 8th seed in the South region. We'll pay attention to all of it when Hour 3 here on Bracket Central, our Selection Sunday special, starts in 55 seconds.